Here it is, Pinkie Pie said, as she pulled out a map of Ponyville. She had gone back to the library to find it. Luckily, she had an uncanny ability to find things she needed very quickly. She took a red marker in her mouth and drew a circle with an X through the road to the chasm with it. She then placed smaller X's on several houses she tried to gain access to find any pony. The town appeared to be empty, abandoned. What happened here? She asked herself, along looking at the map of X's. She only investigated a small portion of Ponyville. But there were always ponies either at home or wandering around. On bad weather days, they'd been in their homes, or there had been at least some notice of any kind of a lot of other ponies would be leaving. Plus, why was there a bottomless pit at the edge of town? I need to get to Sugar Cube Corner. If I can make it there, I can get in my hot air balloon and try to see if there's any Pegasi in the sky. They might have an explanation for the fog, Pinkie Pie said, confirming her plan of action in her head. She also admitted to being worried about Gummy. She always hoped that he would be all right. She quickly checked her route on the map, before packing up the map and then in her pen into her bag. She then marked out any unusual occurrences she encountered in Ponyville on the map of her remember. She then stepped back out into the chilly day when something cold and wet landed on her nose. Huh? Pinkie asked, trying to see what the end of her nose was. She shook her head a little. Then she looked up to the sky. Small specks of snow began to fall as they were slowly hitting the ground. Snow? But it's summer, Pinkie said in shock, staring at the white spectacle. She could see her breath, but she hadn't realized it was cold enough for snow out. The Pegasi controlled the weather, so they must be up there right now. Pinkie headed towards a gallop towards Sugar Cube Corner. Suddenly, Pinkie had heard static sound coming from her bag. It was that miniature phonograph making that noise again. It certainly picked up random times said so. Pinkie was then knocked out of her thoughts when she saw the outline of the figure in the fog. Oh, some ponies here, she said in her hope rising. She quickly ran faster to the figure, but as she got closer though, she couldn't help but get a strong feeling that something wasn't right. As the phonograph grew louder, "Hey, what's going on?" she instantly asked before she even assessing who it was. She stopped shortly though when she got a good look at the pony. She let out a high-pitched scream. The pony was barely a pony anymore. Its coat and mane were gone, replaced with what looked like rotting flesh that it was trying to live. One of its legs were missing. There was a missing chunk of flesh from its back. Its eyes looked like they had been gouged out. Several teeth looked like they had been knocked out with holes and bleeding, and several lacerations covered its body. Are you all right? Pinkie said, taking a step back from the pony. Her initial reaction was to figure out if it was in pain, but in her gut told her to stay away. This thing didn't want her help. The phonograph in her bag started to ring out of the hook. Grrr! The fleshy mass lunged at Pinkie, its teeth bearing down to strike down. However, Pinkie cried out and jumped away as the creature fell where she was standing, its teeth sunking into the dirt. Pinkie then took a few more steps away from the creature as it brought its head up, and with a mouthful of dirt in its teeth. It growled as the dirt dribbled out of its mouth, soaking the dirt with its blood. It then began to slowly lumber towards Pinkie again, growling as it seemed to smell her out. Stay back! Stay back! Pinkie cried out while trying to backpedal away from the terrifying creature. It growled and moaned, dripping trail of blood as it went intent on tracking her. The creature terrified Pinkie. It looked a bit like if it was on the verge of death, yet it wouldn't die. Instead, it was intent on attacking her. Every fiber of her being told her to run away, run as fast and far as she could away from this creature. Stay away from me, she cried, before her legs finally took action and ran around the creature. Quickly galloping away, the creature went to lunge again, its teeth implanting on the dirt once more as Pinkie ran past. As she got further and further away from the phonograph in her bag, it began to slow down, before going silent once more. She collapsed into a sitting position as she breathed heavily. Her heart was beating with a mile a minute in her throat. What was that thing? Why did it attack her? Why did it look like a pony? Why she had not seen any pony else but that thing? Sugar, cube, corner, Pinky panted while trying to calm her nerves. She then bit down on her arm, pinching herself to remind herself that she wasn't dreaming. She was in control of herself. She could run away from what she saw. This was not a dream. She then shook her head and tried to get back in her hooves again and began to run again. The door to her room, the Sugar Cube corner, it creaked open slowly as Pinky pushed it. The inside of her room, which was pitch black. She couldn't see anything past the frame of her door. She carefully dug into her bag and pulled out the lantern, holding it within her mouth as she turned to look at the doorknob. The wick came to life, and the flame shining. She stepped into her room, the light of the lantern illuminating from what she couldn't see before. Then she looked at the shock at the state of her room. It looked like it hadn't been used for years. The wallpaper was rotted and peeling, the wooden floor was splintering and falling apart, and the curtains were riddled with holes. Dust was thick and the air was stagnant. Pinky then looked around and she was confused, before placing the lamp down gently onto a table so she could see the whole room. Was I gone for a long time? Pinky asked as she stepped through the room, hearing the floor creak and groan, and adjusted her weight. Twilight couldn't have used a spell to send me back to the future if she was going to help me, would she? Pinky said, but she wasn't sure what to think. The spell did say it would be disorienting. I guess this could be a part of the side effect. The phonograph began to let out a soft static. Pinky then dropped her tricks and listened to it. The last time it went off, she met the creature and it had gotten louder as she got closer to it. She then looked around the room hastily, but couldn't see anything, but it looked like a monster. Calm down, Pinky. There's nothing too serious to worry about. Let's just check and see if Gummy is here. Grab the balloon, head for the sky, and you could put this creepiness behind you then, Pinky said as she grabbed the lantern in her teeth and quickly rushed to the bathroom door open. Gummy, she called out. Despite the lantern in her teeth, she looked into the bathroom and nearly dropped the lantern. The walls were smeared with blood. Bloody hoof prints hastily scribbled in words. The curtains were torn into shreds, the remains barely hanging on to the poles that used to hold them. Caked in blood, covered outside of the tub, the whole room looked like a massacre. Gummy, are you in here? Her words were muffled, but she had to check. She had to look. Her mind screamed to leave, but she had to find out if he was here or not. She took in steps to the bathroom, her hooves echoing loudly. As she stepped into the tile, only relief when she got to where the phonograph grew quieter as she stepped further. She then placed the lantern down on the sink and gulped as best she could. The room stank of mold and blood. It made her want to gag. She carefully checked around the tub and curtains, only to see more blood. She then turned to the walls, getting a chance to read what was written hastily in scribbled blood. Help me. Pain. He hungers. The words sent chills down her back. What did they mean? He hungers? The words echoed in her head. Was that referring to Gummy? But Gummy had no teeth. The only thing he could swallow was mushy gator food that she brought for him. What happened in her bathroom? Why would have this happen here? Her mind was reeling with questions. She desperately needed to comfort from one of her friends right now. She stepped further away from the wall, and there was only one place left she had to check, and that was the tub itself. She very carefully leaned over to the edge of the tub, looking down into it. In the tub lay a half-rotten remains of a tiny green gator. Pinky threw her hooves over her mouth as tears began to stream out of her eyes. It was unmistakable. That was Gummy. He looked like he had been there for a long time. Pinky's stomach was moving to her throat as she started. Why is this happening? Was the question bouncing around her head again and again, and she needed answers. It was then she noticed that the bright ribbon was tied aimlessly to a bow into something that was sticking out of Gummy's mouth. Pinky swallowed as she stared at the item, not sure what it meant. The item was clean, and it was free of blood. It looked like Gummy was trying to give it to her. Pinky gingerly lowered her hoof, took the item from Gummy's mouth, and the item slipping out of it with a bit of ease. She was able to look at it clearly now, realizing it was a key. The key had a symbol of a star on it. She didn't quite know what that meant, but Gummy had given it to her to last his days. She had kept it, and she gently placed the key in her bag, remembering just then the phonograph was still giving off that quiet buzz. She carefully grabbed her lantern, stepped out of the bathroom, closing the doors behind her. She then placed the lantern back down to the ground as she wiped her face again, hiccuping. "Gummy, I'm so sorry." She then cried into her hoof as she desperately tried to calm down. "I promise, I'll give you the proper burial you deserve one day." She held back another sob. "Please forgive me for not being there for you," she then said as her shoulders shook. Her attempts of calming down were failing. The tears were pouring out stronger now. She just wanted to sit and cry. Her mind snapped, unaware that she heard buzzing growing louder. Turning to her high-pitched ringing, whatever was setting off was getting closer. That meant that she didn't have time that she needed to sit there and cry her heart out. She had to move, or the fate befell Gummy was going to fall upon her too. She hastily grabbed the lantern and ran across the room closet where she kept the balloon. The ringing grew louder, and her heart was racing like a mile a minute. She grabbed the closest closet doors and ripped them out. A high-pitched scream erupted, while a white blur latched onto Pinky's face. Pinky whirled her head around frantically as the pain struck all around her face. She scrambled to her hooves and rammed her head against the wall, erupting another screech from the blur. She whirled her head and flung it across the room. Pinky breathed heavily as she felt blood trickling down the side of her face. She then looked at her attacker, her eyes opening in shock. Sky? Rivering the floor that what looked like upon the upper half of the hairless young filly. It was white skin began to rot from its bone, two front hooves grasping for land as it flailed onto its back, its eyes covered in white bandana as its black mouth opened, a long tongue flickering it out as it lets out its wailing cry. The screech had been strung in her ears louder than the ringing of her phonograph. Pinkie Pie was speechless upon seeing this creature. That thing resembled a filly. Her stomach did flip. Full-grown pony was one thing. The creature found its way right side up, and wailing its screeches quieted down, as it seemed to be tasting the air, its tongue flickering about. Pinkie then winced as she tried to take a step back, only to find a wall there. The creature's head snapped to look straight at Pinkie, let out another wail as with a shocking speed, as it began to crawl straight at her. In blind rush, she quickly jumped to the side, the creature slamming its head right against the wall, letting out a wailing cry as it flailed its head open. Pinkie's heart pounded in her throat as she watched the creature. Its wailing cry made it sound so pitiful. It had left a sizable blood stain on the walls of its head as it's bleeding profusely. It failed as its head back and forth. Pinkie wanted to reach out and help it, but she wanted to stop its pain and let it know everything is all right. The creature let out a blood-curdling scream and rushed at her again, its mouth clamped down hard on her leg. Pinkie cried out as she flailed her leg, trying to get the creature off, but it held on with a tight grip. She began to run around, shaking the creature, but its grip seemed to get tighter. She couldn't hear anything beyond the screams and the beat other than the beating of her heart. She then stopped and, next to a wall, slammed the creature hard against the wall. The creature was still there. She slammed it again, and she slammed it again, and again, and again. Warm blood splattered against the wall onto her coat. She slammed it with all of her might against the wall. The creature then slid off as its life escaped its body, collapsing onto the ground with a thud. Pinkie's breath filled with lungs in the air as her body shook with adrenaline. She looked down at her bleeding leg, then looked at the creature she just finished off. "Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no." Pinkie then said in shaky breath as she stepped backwards towards the creature. She hadn't meant to kill it. Did it deserve death? It had attacked her, but was it the right thing to do? She then sat up on the ground panting, her body shaking, her mind reeling. She then looked down at her body and saw a soft splatter of blood against her coat. Her stomach flipped again and again. The contents were about to come up. "What have I done?" she gasped, trying to cool but her burning lungs. Why did it have to come to this? She then shook her head violently. She didn't want any of this, but it was happening. This was no dream. She could wake up from it all to go away. This was here and it was real. She took a deep breath and she tried to stand on her shaking legs. Rainbow Dash, Rarity, Fluttershy, Applejack, Twilight, any pony? I need you right now, she said shakily, walking towards the closet. She then grabbed the lantern, looked into the darkness. The balloon was there, and the basket was holding a deflated balloon. Hope rose in her heart as she placed the lantern down, began to pull the cloth from the basket. Large holes riddled the balloon. It wasn't usable for flight. Pinkie broke out in sobbing tears, ears crying into the hole-written cloth. The phonograph had finally stopped ringing.